you have an interesting story as I think about it, and how all this progressed. So some years ago, you decided to resign from being on staff at a hospital, and you
Hmm.
were going to go into private practice. We don't see that much anymore. We generally see the opposite.
Yeah.
But you that might have been a surprise to some. But what was the big surprise was to you when you realized that healthcare was going to cost you over $2,000 a month
Yeah.
for your
It's actually interesting.
family
I
of
was
seven
blessed.
or six. How
Sorry, I
big?
didn't.
How many children do you have? Five?
Yep. I've got, oh, no, 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 there's four of us total, two
Oh,
kids and the
four.
two of us.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Okay,
But
so
we'll get
tell.
into the whole Samaritan thing about how that
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
too
yeah.
meaningful. You can have up to seven people total at the price point I pay, but I'm jumping ahead of myself on that. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. I think looking back on it, I was actually in an administrative training programs through our hospital system, and I've got nothing wrong with our hospital; it's a good hospital. But I got to see kind of how the sausage is made, and the sad truth is I think there's no greater fraud perpetrated on the American public financially than what's occurring in healthcare. As you know, it's about 20% of our gross domestic product, and that's far more than anyone would willingly pay if they could control those dollars. So I decided it not only was costing a lot of money, it was actually corrupting the practice of care too. We were being told by administrators and bureaucrats and such what we could do, what we could order, how many people we had to see, and people were losing faith in the allopathic or the traditional practice of medicine because they saw it so bureaucratized. I knew that that didn't have to be the way it had to be for medicine, so I decided to stretch my legs and go out on my own. And honestly, it's out of desperation that sometimes wonderful things occur. I was so miserable in that model of practice because it wasn't allowing me to be the type of doctor that I wanted to be, that I decided to, with a mortgage and taxes and everything else and kids in school, I decided to roll the dice on something that was really unproven at the time. And that's a direct care practice, which it means I'm working for my patients without the third party insurance intermediaries. But when I did that, I became a small business owner, right? So
Right, right.
I had to look around, and I lost my insurance from the hospital, and I went onto the exchanges at the time, and was shocked to see that $26,000 was the premium that I was being offered. What you pay for that card to be in your pocket, and that was before I ever even saw a doctor. So we're talking essentially, I was purchasing a car every year.
Yeah.
And no one does that, right? Because that's too big of an expense. You're not going to burn through a car in a year. And yet we were doing that every year for my family if I had decided to go with that product. And that was still had a deductible. I would still have to have paid more than that if I actually utilized care. So I knew direct primary care was a good way to go because we have inexpensive monthly memberships, and we can get meds, labs, and imaging at pennies on the dollar. Literally, we can treat hypertension for 100 days with a drug called amlodipine for under $1. We actually can treat hypertension, one of the leading causes of premature death in the United States, for an entire month for less than the cost of a single gumball. So why is everything so expensive? So it's a combination of overpriced care and overpriced coverage. So when I looked out for coverage, I was very disappointed what I found on the ACA exchanges. So I started looking for other options that I could combine with the inexpensive care through direct care. And I found Samaritan. I actually found looked at a number of health sharing ministries. A lot of them are very good options. For my family specifically, we're devout churchgoers, and Samaritan perfectly fit the bill. It's been around for a long time. It was kind of a scary proposition initially because I'm giving up traditional insurance, which
Mm.
everybody thinks you have to do that. In fact, many of us know nothing about healthcare other than with an insurance company involved in the mix, because that's our entire generation. That's all the way medical care has been provided. But historically, this is actually the anomaly. Historically, doctors did not work for insurance companies, worked for our patients. So Samaritan was, if I combined the direct primary care with the coverage for my entire family, excuse me, instead of the around $1,200 a month that I would have paid for traditional insurance, it was only $730 a month. And that's including unlimited primary care. So when I started looking at those profound numbers, $1,500 a month, I started, doing the math, and I realized that if I had extrapolated that out over a decade, not depriving myself of medical care, but simply getting medical care at a good price, I could save over $172,000 with medical care, not depriving myself of medical care, which is essentially enough to buy a house every single decade with cash. Mm-hmm. And understand, houses are historically the biggest purchase you will ever make in your life. And they're so expensive, theoretically, that you have to take out a 30-year mortgage, 3 decades to pay it off. And yet the average family, mine being quite average in the sense of our size, could buy a house every decade without taking out a mortgage. And you realize when you extrapolate that across the economy, what profound effects that would have. People would have so much more money in their pocket. They would be able to spend it on things that they want to spend it on: TVs, cars, retirement savings, their kids' college education, whatever it is. And by retaining those dollars, they'd be able to afford the medical care when they actually needed it. And that also aligns the interests of the healthcare system. Right, because right now, the payment is through the insurance company. So all of the healthcare system is focused on the insurance company. But when the patient is in charge of those dollars, and by saving the dollars in the first place is the best way to remain in charge of them, the interests align upon the payer. And in that situation, the payer is the patient. So the doctors, the hospitals, the labs, everything are interested in making the patient happy because the patient can fire them. And as weird as it may sound, I've always said people should retain the ability to fire us. I'm internally motivated. Sure. I like to think a lot of doctors are good, altruistic people, are internally motivated. But having that little extra kick in the pants of, you know what, Mrs. So-and-so called and she wants a call back today. And, there's an expectation of, well, in this instance, she's my boss and I want to make her happy. So I'm going to make sure she gets good care. So it really, the financing of medical care has corrupted medical care, and looking at alternatives like Samaritan, combining it with less expensive coverage, and not just through us, but you can do things like Healthcare Blue Book, which gives you an idea of what prices should cost. There are surgical centers like Surgical Center of Oklahoma who will do surgeries 90% cheaper than local hospitals.
Yeah. Hey, remember to click the subscribe button right here on the screen, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when new content is added. And more importantly than anything, you don't want to miss all 3 live hours of Financial Issues every day from 9 to noon. And you can watch it on FISM.TV. That's FISM.TV.